Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the latest in this series of Intralogistics Connected webinars. I'm John Thornton, editor of Robotics and Innovation magazine, and your host for today's session, which is sponsored by OWR and HIC Robot. Now, as more and more organizations are quickly realizing, automation and specifically robotics are transforming modern warehouses in ways never imagined before. Capable of undertaking arduous and repetitive tasks more efficiently, robots represent a step change in logistics, allowing warehousing firms to better serve their customers, protect margins, and future-proof their operations. But just how ready is the UK warehousing industry for the robot revolution? Answering that question today are OWR's robotics business consultant, Greg Downey, and head of robotics, Joe Daft. Together, Greg and Joe will utilize OWR's market-leading data set, which draws on more than 50 independent sources and qualitative research to provide a robotics-ready verdict across a range of sectors to highlight where the warehouse automation opportunities lie in 2021. At this point, I'd just like to encourage viewers to ask questions throughout the presentation via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please remember to submit your name, job title, and company name when doing so. I'll pose as many of these questions as possible to Greg and Joe in the time available following the presentation. Also, a recording of this webinar will be made available to view on demand from tomorrow afternoon via logisticsmanager.com and roboticsandinnovation.co.uk. Before we begin, we have a quick interactive poll for you, the viewers. We'd like to know, where are you on your journey with flexible warehouse automation? Please select your answer from the list of choices provided on the screen now. Whilst we're waiting for those answers to come in, I will now hand over to Joe to start the presentation section of this webinar.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this Intralogistics Connected webinar. My name's Joe Daft, and I'm the head of robotics at OW Robotics, otherwise known as OWR, and I'm here this afternoon with Greg Downey, who's our robotics business consultant. This webinar marks the pre-launch of our latest report, Is Your Warehouse Ready for the Robot Revolution? You should have all received copies of this, but if not, there'll be an opportunity to get a copy at the end of the webinar. There will also be a chance for you to ask questions using the Q&A option, and myself and Greg will do our best to answer those at the end as well. So first, let's kick off with a little bit of information about ourselves at OWR. We build flexible robotic solutions for businesses in a wide range of industries, such as 3PLs, wholesalers, and e-commerce operations. Our solutions come from over 30 years experience in warehousing and allow businesses of all sizes to change the future of their operations using robotic technology. We're also home to the first robotic demonstration in the UK and Europe, which provides a one-of-a-kind opportunity for anyone who wants to learn about flexible automation. Visitors to this centre can take a tour of our goods to person A to B solutions and get hands-on experience with our workstations to really get a feel for how it all works. I'd highly recommend this step of the scoping process for anyone who's looking to invest in flexible automation. It really is just a great opportunity to get all of your questions answered in one hit and a place to see the technology firsthand and to interact with it. First and foremost, though, we're a solutions company in warehouse robotics. We build whole solutions rather than just reselling equipment. As part of a solution, you'll get the robots, the racks, the workstations, and more, and depending on what you're looking to achieve with your new setup. When you come to work with us, we work with you to meet your individual requirements. Whether you're looking to combat long walk times from A to B in the warehouse or make more efficient use of your current space or meet increasing demand. One of the biggest reasons to invest in flexible automation is to save on costs and to generate results. And throughout this, we'll share statistics with you throughout just to sort of demonstrate the true scale of how much flexible automation can transform your entire business. One thing also to note is that we're based here in the UK, and we've got a team of over 200 people available to provide support on our solutions. This offers added peace of mind for anyone who's looking to make an investment into automation of this scale. So, leading on from ourselves, there's our partner, which is HIC Robot, and they're a global solutions partner that we've actually worked with for some time now. Thanks to this collaboration, you can be sure that you're receiving world-leading robotic hardware, along with the proven software and operational experience from OWR, and that's all based here in the UK. Again, it's peace of mind for our customers to know that they have OWR as a point of contact for their new solution, all while receiving the very best in warehouse automation hardware. Now, just before we get into the sort of the main part of the presentation, if you'd like to comment in the chat box, you can choose Meet, Guide, or both. If you put in Meet, one of our team will arrange a tour of our robotics demonstration center, either remote or in person. If you type in Guide, if you haven't received a copy of the latest white paper, which is How Ready is the UK Warehousing Industry for the Robot Revolution? Or if you type in both into that chat box, one of our team will arrange both of those for you.
So let's begin the presentation by discussing the state of the robotics market. So it's no secret that manufacturing has led the way in introducing robotics, but the same commercial gains have been seen in warehousing. For example, we all know that Amazon acquired Kiva Systems for £600 million in 2012. This was a major game changer for the industry. It sped up the pace for change and made the warehouse robotics market the competitive and vibrant place that it is today. Competition in the market means that robotic manufacturers are innovating quickly and always improving their functionality and technical capabilities, whilst at the same time trying to drive down the cost, making the investment into robotics for a lot of businesses more achievable and achieve a more attractive ROI. Unlike Amazon, other businesses might not have the resource to develop their own robotics technology, so instead, many businesses rely on strategic partnerships with tech firms instead. Ocado is also a dominant player in the warehousing robotics and is now the UK's most valuable grocer. Other supermarkets are moving quickly to compete with Ocado by building robotics into their logistics operations, and we'll discuss a little bit more about this later. As you can see by the figures in the top right of your screen, the UK as a whole lag behind other European countries when it comes to robotics adoption in general. As you can see, the number of robots actually operating in particular countries means that we're so far behind our European neighbours in France, Germany, and Italy in terms of physical robots in action. Whilst the UK might have mature e-commerce, pharma, grocery, and retail markets, we're not as quick to make the investment into automation that will help these markets further. Plus, with Brexit, if businesses fail to invest in robotics, it will put some UK firms at a disadvantage, especially those who traditionally relied on EU labour. Their costs are likely to be higher, and for businesses trading in the EU, it might make more sense for them to move their operations to the mainland. It's also worth noting at this point as well that automation adoption rates are still very much taken up by large businesses, coming in at 28% compared to just 4% of SMEs. So the race for space, I speak to people on a daily basis and we have the same conversation about this. The UK is experiencing a race for space at the minute. In 2020, take-up of industrial and logistics space hit record levels, reaching 22.4 million square feet, which is 66% above the long-term average. Some 43% of take-up can be attributed to online retailers, with Amazon alone accounting for up to 84% of this figure. 3PLs accounted for 15%, with many fulfilling contracts for the NHS in the wake of COVID at the early parts of last year. Another 11% were short-term lease agreements with high street retailers with an excess stock to store as a result of COVID-19. With land and labour in short supply and demand expected to grow, automation is only ever going to become more valuable to warehousing firms. Again, this highlights the impact robotics could have on alleviating this problem. An automated storage and retrieval system could save up to 85% of otherwise wasted warehouse space and reduce 60% of labour costs. This is on top of increasing throughput and accuracy. Then there's the labour shortages we're currently contending with. Labour has been a long-standing problem in the warehousing industry, and sadly, it's only looking to get worse. Operators are expected to achieve more at no extra costs, and this puts a lot of pressure on them to actually fulfill their targets and daily rates. This can also have a negative impact on the dampening of the work ethic within the workforce. On top of this, there are already negative perceptions around warehousing work, making recruitment tough for warehousing positions as it is. Then there's the lack of the EU labour to contend with as a result of Brexit, adding to an already mounting problem being faced in the UK warehousing industry. Robotics is a fantastic solution for dealing with labour shortages. The outlay for a robot is the same as one full-time picker, but you have no overtime to pay, no management, no time-consuming training for new recruits, no absence costs, or no outsourcing fees to pay at the same time. Obviously, robots have the added benefit as well, as obviously they can be productive for up to 2 or 3 individuals, so they can keep them constantly running at the same time. You also don't have to worry about heat or light in the building when the robots are working overnight. So how will COVID-19 shape the warehousing industry? Now we're adding COVID-19 into the mix. With Brexit, labour shortages and land availability, operators are far more likely to look into the investment of automation, and many are doing so already. As we all know, lockdown has accelerated the shift towards e-commerce quicker than anyone could have predicted. It brought new sales opportunities for retailers and the logistics companies that serve them, but also for those whose supply chains lacked resilience and flexibility, they paid the price with COVID. The pandemic prompted many shoppers to change how they even buy groceries, with 10% trying delivery, 6% using in-store click and collect, and 10% collecting via a drive-through. Supermarkets off the back of this increased delivery slots in response, and many new converts now look to continue their grocery shopping as they have been doing through the pandemic, using these methods of delivery, click and collect, and obviously the drive-through. This increase in demand has given businesses a stronger sense of what they need to do in order to deliver for their customers. They know they need to be more productive and to have the flexibility to operate in downtimes or when demand spikes massively. The UK Warehousing Association has warned that recruitment will be even more difficult with Brexit on our hands. The number of EU citizens coming into work for work-related reasons has decreased to the lowest level since 2004, driving an overall fall in immigration for work since 2016. Plus, around 1 in 5 forklift truck drivers and warehouse operatives are reported to be EU nationals, and their vocational status in the UK is described as uncertain at this time. However, it is not clear yet whether this downward trend will continue, as we don't know how many EU nationals who have lived in the UK for more than 5 years will apply for settled status before the June 2021 deadline. The uncertainty around Brexit will cause a headache for operators in the short term at least, but as with COVID-19, it's also likely to prompt positive changes in a bid to improve operational resilience across many industries. The availability and affordability of new technology is one of the reasons why more businesses are starting to think more seriously about automation within their operation. Automation will play an important role in helping operators achieve this operational resilience. As long as they see strong returns in the short and long term, a quality robotic solution will involve minimal disruption during implementation and ease of use from the start, followed by that all-important return on investment in as little as 12 months for certain operations.
Online retail saw the biggest boom last year as a result of the global pandemic. COVID-19 restrictions have seriously deepened the divide between bricks and mortar and retail, and especially e-commerce. Stores have already been struggling in the face of online competition, but with COVID-19, they lost months of trade even when they reopened. Low footfall continued due to the lack of tourists and office workers as well. However, online sales boomed during the lockdown period, rising as much as by 50% in the summer of 2020 compared to February that year. Now, as many as 44% of shoppers say their habits have changed permanently as a result of the pandemic, and 47% believe they'll make even more purchases online as a result. Tight margins and high customer expectations have already paved the way for automation within retail. Global brands are reaping the benefits of automation, and companies such as Boots introduced 135 cobots at one of its warehouses in preparation for Black Friday 2019. However, there is still a lot of work to be done, and it has to be said that around 53% of retail activities could be automated predominantly within the logistics space. Packing, stock management, data collection, and other manual tasks are suited to automation, and robots are equally well suited to the fast-paced nature of e-commerce. As Greg's mentioned previously, they can operate 24/7 without the risk of illness or injury, and pick items with speed and accuracy as well. Using intelligence, they can also plan the best routes to reduce pick times and costs, and have a proven track record for reducing error rates. Now, if we take a step back and look at that giant again of the e-commerce space, which is Amazon, they now operate more than 250,000 warehouse robots internationally, 8 times the number it had alone in 2016, and this supports pick rates of up to 800 items per hour. Now, Ocado is close behind with its robots able to pick as many as 700 orders per hour, and to put this into context, a person could normally be expected to pick anywhere from 1 to 200 items per hour, depending on the operation. Now, it's worth mentioning that COVID-19 has encouraged B2B businesses to take a different approach in direct-to-consumer. An example of this would be Heinz, who launched the Heinz to Home service, enabling customers to purchase bundles of products and have them delivered straight to their front door. Similarly, Pepsi launched snacks.com and pantryshop.com back in May 2022 in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this goes without saying that taking a different and direct consumer approach will mean that warehouses just have to rethink how they do things. Inevitably, robotics will have a greater role to play if the direct consumer approach becomes more widespread and continues. Automation is also becoming more common in the 3PL market space, particularly among tech-led startups that serve e-commerce. Like any warehouse operator, businesses with robotics benefit from increased efficiency and productivity and overall better customer services. But the question has to be asked as to why they aren't moving and taking it on and becoming more prevalent within robotic automation. While many firms use a WMS and other automation technologies, as much as 90% of picking is still done manually. Research found that almost 60% of businesses said that 3PL is poor at introducing new initiatives, and none rated it as extremely good. What's equally worse is that 3PLs didn't realize the scale of the problem, and with most suggesting that they were just good at introducing new initiatives in comparison to what their customers actually thought. Part of this reluctance to invest could be down to multi-tenancy 3PLs wanting to ensure robotics will deliver a strong return on investment beyond the lifetime of the existing customer contracts that they currently hold. They'll also be looking for flexibility, as they may need to reconfigure their warehouse to accommodate different products and different types and sizes as those contracts mature. Now, as we mentioned before, automation dramatically increases pick rates, which could lead to a 6-fold rise in productivity on manual pick to pallet warehouses. So there's no doubt about it being the right investment for these 3PLs. But as we've mentioned previously, 90% of picking is still done manually. Amazon has set the gold standard for rapid fulfillment with its 3PL arm, FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. And other 3PLs feel they have little choice but to match its capabilities if they want to ring contracts from other retailers. It's worth mentioning that some big brands have left Amazon, creating new opportunities for 3PLs and a gap in the market for 3PLs wanting to serve those customers in a different way. Now, after Ocado's success that we mentioned earlier, there's also a lot of competition to innovate the food and drink industry. Ocado's chief executive and co-founder, Tim Steiner, attributed its success to the company's centralized warehouse model. He said that compared to the store-to-pick model that other supermarkets tend to use, Ocado is not exposed to structurally weaker profit margins. Now, the technical investments that Ocado made during the COVID-19 pandemic led to them increasing the number of picks per hour from 600 to 700, far higher than human pickers could even achieve in the most efficient warehouses. And other big grocers are following suit as well. Aldi is expanding its home delivery service via Deliveroo. Asda's distribution centre in Warrington is 97% automated and its staff are supported by robots. Tesco similarly is working with Ocado's tech partner to bring robotics to logistics centres as well. Dark stores are also making an appearance as they allow staff to pick items quickly without getting in the way of customers. And they've paved the way for automation and robotics, which can be seen at the Tesco Customer Fulfillment Centre in London. Other retailers and supermarkets do not have to create their own automated warehouses from scratch. Strategic partnerships with robotics suppliers and 3PLs that use the technology in the warehouses can help retailers keep pace with the shifts in the market. An example of this would be Waitrose, who joined forces with the 3PL arm Wincanton to develop a customer fulfillment centre in London. And it's not just supermarkets that are making the investment. Manufacturer Nestle is investing in robotics and automation for its large-scale distribution centre in the East Midlands, and there's potential for this technology to be adopted further down the supply chain as well. One area, though, where it could be a complete game changer is cold storage warehouses, because unlike humans, robots can work in hospital environments with no break or risk to health and time limits in cold storage. Robotics can take existing warehouse automation to the next level by reducing costs and helping supermarkets make delivery more profitable. This is going to be essential if the buying habits that we've seen as a result of COVID-19 are here for good. But then there's the pharmaceuticals industry. Undeniably, there's a real need for automation here to meet the operational demands that have come with making life-saving products. Humidity and temperature control facilities are also a huge operational requirement. Manufacturers such as Grifols produce blood plasma-based products and need minimal human intervention to eliminate risk. That's where automation comes in. To ensure traceability, auditability, and product security and safety, plus their storage spaces can be kept at the required -35 degrees Celsius because, unlike a manual warehouse, people are not constantly opening and closing doors and being exposed to those temperatures. Robots are becoming a common sight in pharmaceuticals manufacturing, including packaging, and they're making their way into the warehouse as well. Houston Logistics works in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry and is developing a semi-automated smart warehouse in Antwerp, which will operate 24/7 and feature induction-driven unmanned trucks that locate the correct pallet through sensor control positioning. So change is really on its way within the pharmaceuticals area. With healthcare to provide for and the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, it's easy to see why automation has already taken off and continues to grow amidst the pandemic. Healthcare providers are under pressure to get drugs to market quickly, and automation is certainly playing an integral part in that role.
So what are the big considerations to look out for? As a robotics business consultant, I speak with people on a daily basis who are looking to start their automation journey. And it always comes down to a few big questions to start this off with. So now that we've looked at a few of the key industries, the current climate and the market, it's time to take a look at where you can start with automation. The first big question, and ultimately it starts with your business. What are the current business's processes like, and how do you guys work? It helps us get a better understanding of how your business operates so we can determine which solutions, or in some cases, solutions, you require to make the most positive change to your current operation. We then have a look at your biggest hardships in the warehouse. What's the biggest pain points to focus around in the day-to-day operation? For example, is this moving stock from goods in to the main pick faces? Is it picking errors? Is it an overwhelming returns operation? Is it that constant struggle of training new employees or agency staff to then continue through a peak to then actually arrive at the other side, having lost out on a lot of cost? We obviously then work alongside you guys to use this information to find the best solution and what we can come up with. Obviously, there is another factor here to take into account, which is obviously the physical warehouse itself. So what's the operating environment of this current warehouse? For instance, we like to start off to know the size of the site, what site is available for a potential robotic solution, and then using our skill set and using our technical capabilities, we can then actually work out what a potential solution would look like. This then focuses on things like how many storage racks are available, how much throughput can we get through the grid itself, but then also pulling all that information together to then have a look at that big ROI question to find out whether it's financially viable for you as a business to invest in automation. So again, choosing the right automation is a huge question that everyone should be asking themselves. There's lots of different types out there, lots of different products on the market that offer lots of different things. It's all about trying to find out what actually is going to bring the best benefit to your business. We focus on three main solution types. So the first one being goods to person robotics. This solution provides a single touch point fulfillment. So when an order arrives in the warehouse, whether that's through e-commerce, whether that's through the phone, whether that's through an email, this will then obviously import into a WMS software or ERP. This then communicates with the robots themselves. The robots then obviously drive around, pick up the necessary rack, and then deliver that to an individual who's waiting to pick the order. Once this arrives at the picker, we use a pick-to-light spotlight, which will then shine on the stock that is relevant to pick. The staff member can then interact with the stock, complete that order, and if necessary, can then ship and label it at that exact station. It's all about that kind of one-touch fulfillment and using that operative as a multifunctional operative. The A to B solution is purely for moving stock across long distances in a warehouse. This can be either from goods in to pick faces or just general transportation of stock around site. A person at a station will obviously load that particular rack with a pallet or a whole bunch of carton stock, depending on what's going on. The robot will then collect this and then deliver it to the relevant area. Once that task is then completed, the robot will then either return to where it came from or then be obviously sent to another job to complete within the site. A to B robotics is extremely powerful in any warehouse operation if you just focus on the repetitive transportation of stock that can be achieved through a robot. Our third solution is a production line solution. Now this kind of focuses down on the kind of manufacturing industry. If you imagine a movable conveyor belt that is all just made of robots, the general idea behind this is the robot would carry the actual relevant part on its back or on a rack. It would drive to an individual. That individual would then carry out their assembly tasks that they actually need to do on that particular piece of stock. Once they're finished, the robot would then obviously move down the line to the next individual who's looking to then carry out their job in the assembly line. And if you have a fleet of robots actually carrying through this, it's a flexible way to actually keep the production line moving. As Joe mentioned earlier, we obviously have our goods to person and A to B solutions, which can be seen in our robotic demonstration center. So if anyone's willing to come along and have a look at it and get first hand with the robots, please feel free to get in contact afterwards. So this all then boils down to the big question really, is your warehouse ready for automation? We can obviously see lots of stats on the screen here about actually how robots can actually improve operations. Goods to person order picking can increase efficiency by 84% and save over 58% on labor costs. Robotics can obviously increase the picking performance from upwards of 100 picks an hour to over 600. And obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Amazon and Ocado are even more above that. So the sky's the limit. Warehouse automation over the past few years has definitely gone from a nice to have to a must have in such a short period of time. And it's only going to gather pace over the next coming years, depending on your operation and depending on your competitors. So I guess then it comes down to the decision is yours. So thanks very much for listening, everybody. I hope you found that very useful. So now we'll start the Q&A session and we're happy to answer any of the questions.
Greg, Joe, thank you very much for that fascinating and really insightful presentation. We've got the results to the poll from earlier. We can share those results with you now. So the question we asked was, where are you on your journey with flexible warehouse automation? 9% said we're doing it across our operation already. 18% said it's in there in parts, but we're looking to expand. 9% said we're well on the way to implement in the next 12 months. 33%, the largest share, said we're currently scoping out options over the next 12 months. And 31% said they're not looking at this in 2021. So that now leads us into the Q&A section of the webinar. And I'm pleased to say that we do have a few questions for you both. Our first question comes from Tim Parker, who says, as far as he's aware, the Amazon system only moves the product around the storage area to create a stock to pick a process. They still have people to put away and pick the product. So how close are we to fully automated robotic picking systems down to the item level?
I think the answer to that is we're actually pretty much there now. it is possible to do that. It all depends on the actual product that you're picking and how your stock is stored. Some solutions that we're actually engaged with at the moment are taking automated production, where the robots are then using robotic arms to stack that product on top of storage mediums for goods to pick are picking, usually on a pallet basis. That then goes into long-term storage, and when the pickers get their orders to complete part pallets or whatever it is, they then complete that task manually. But that could be automated. I think the answer is it just comes down to the actual product that you're looking to move. If it's extremely heavy, bulky, or anything like that, that's where sometimes it can become a little bit tricky. But I think, yeah, it is here. It just boils down to what your operation is and what that product is as well.
Thank you, Joe. The next question asks, in your experience, what kind of improvements in throughput have you seen for customers, and how quickly can these be realized?
I think to start that off with, a client that we've just gone live with a few months ago, within the first month, they increased picking rates by up to 4 times their usual rates. And that's with obviously a minimal amount of time with the solution in. I think, again, it all comes down to that question of what's the operation completing at the minute, what the kind of focus points to work with, and actually how well does robotics fit in with that. Obviously we've shared in this report today, there's some fantastic industries out there that robotics is really well suited to, and lots of really quick short wins that you can achieve by implementing a solution. Again, it all just comes down to the physical operation itself, really.
Thank you, Greg. Our next question comes from Jamie Harris, who asks, have you seen an increase for the demand for robotic cleaning machines to be used in conjunction with robotic machines currently being used in these locations?
I mean, we don't actually provide robotic cleaning machines, but we have seen that large 3PLs and facilities are employing sort of automated cleaning, hoovering, and sort of washing facilities for floors and bits and pieces. And yeah, obviously they work alongside the sort of A2B solutions and things that we have in place in those areas.
Yeah, I think the pharmaceutical industry on that one as well. Obviously, there's lots in the news at the minute of particular hospitals and things using automated cleaning robots to achieve it. Obviously, it's a fantastic method of obviously keeping hospitals clean with obviously just a robot rather than an individual doing it. So there's lots of good success stories out there about that.
Brilliant. Thank you, gents. Next question here. We're currently considering implementing warehouse automation. You gave us a brief overview, but what are the key things we need to consider when thinking about this, particularly about working with our existing infrastructure?
I think to start off with there, obviously the key elements, as we've already kind of discussed, is have a look at your main pain points and have a look at what we're looking to achieve with the solution. Is it a particular aspect that you're focusing on? Is it kind of pick discrepancies? Is it pick efficiency? Is it reducing that overall staff level count? And then obviously as a partner, we would then work alongside you guys to work out whether actually the ROI is attractive at this particular point. We've seen actually that there is a nice little breakpoint between throughput and efficiency within the site to then obviously make the robotic solution affordable. But obviously there's lots of different ideas and lots of different process flows out there that we can start off with to really start getting down to the nitty gritty of what a robotic solution would do for you. So start off by having a look at the pain points, start off by having a look at your infrastructure in the background. So whether you have a WMS or an ERP system that is already there and fully integrated at the minute, that obviously then makes the robotic journey a lot better as we progress through.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that question, what are the health and safety implications that need to be considered?
With any sort of piece of machinery, you need to consider all the moving aspects of it. Some of our robots are obviously SLAM navigated, so they're able to work within humans. If you're looking for super fast fulfillment like for e-commerce and a goods to person solution, we'd recommend you create that barrier between people and robots. It's not just for a safety requirement, it's also for an operational throughput requirement. One person interacting with it in the wrong way could trigger safety mechanisms which can stop the whole sort of operation. And that's not really what you want in fast fulfillment. So there's two parts to it. There's the safety side depending on the solution you go for, but there's also how that impacts the operation if it was to be interacted with. So you must consider both, but same as any traditional piece of moving equipment, it needs to follow the right directives.
Brilliant. Thank you. Our next question comes from Rob Lawton, who asks, can robots complete traditional warehouse palletized put away and retrieval into standard pallet racking for standard UK pallets?
The answer is yes, they can. It depends on how high your pallet racking is and the weight of those pallets. One thing I would say though is don't just try to shoehorn automation in and try and get ROI out of that. I think you need to take a step back and look at the operation and work out the best way of doing it. That's where you're going to get the quickest return on investment. It is possible to do those things, but you need to consider the time, the space, and everything that's available. Just replacing people by robots just doesn't work. That's not going to. You're not going to see the benefit immediately. You need to look at the bigger picture.
Thank you, Joe. Our next question here asks, how long would an average implementation take? And how do we minimize disruption to our existing operations during implementation?
I think that all comes down to planning is the answer to that. So our projects teams and our technical teams here will work with you and your current operations to figure out how that we keep everything working and deploy it at the same time. Standard deployment times can vary greatly depending on the size of solution. So it's a goods to person solution that comprises of, I don't know, 50 storage modules all the way through to some solutions that we're looking at sort of 2000 plus. It really depends on the complexity of what you're going into as to how long it takes. But typical on average from 0 to something, you'd be looking around 3 months.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next question comes from Owen Nicholson, who asks, what do you see as the most common system for localization of the robots within the global warehouse? And what are the biggest pain points here?
I'll let Greg answer this one.
I think on that one, there's obviously a lot of interesting elements about that. So the most common system for localization, it's about trying to work out what exactly works for each operational type. I think the biggest pain point for a lot of people looking into automation at the minute is a lot of companies obviously can share fantastic technical documents, they can share fantastic elements, you can see things at trade shows, but trying to get that to then bring back to your site and your operation and trying to amplify that across is always the kind of biggest mind challenge, trying to then bring it over and actually understand how it's going to work for you guys. So I think a lot of people have a lot of pain points where they focus on a particular aspect and say, yep, this can be fantastic for us. And then actually once they start bringing it home and understanding it in their operation, maybe it's just not been thought out or planned out properly. And that then obviously hampers them in terms of the impacts. Interesting question though. I suppose on that one, there's lots of discussion points around that, which obviously we can pick up at a later time or spend hours and hours talking about it if we had the time as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Greg. Next question here asks, what are the benefits of coming to the Robotics Demonstration Centre, and is it COVID compliant?
Yeah, the benefits are pretty easy to see. With clients that we get here, we sort of end up with a bit of like a deer in the headlights moment usually once they actually see the equipment in front of them completing tasks. And yeah, obviously we are a COVID compliant business, so we can comply with any specific requirements that you may also have for certain companies and they're going out on visits as well. But this allows people to get their hands on the actual technology, to understand it, to even sometimes if we go through that project process of scoping it and specification to mock up their operations. So not only is it a demonstration center, but it's also a sandbox as well. So when you engage with us, you can actually get your products, your workflow, your specifics to your requirements here without having to put it on site and interrupt your current operations. Do that here and use this space for that. So yeah, people see great benefit from it, and I would highly encourage that for anyone who's looking into going into automation.
Thank you, Joe. Chris Wilson asks, to complement the robotic solutions that you offer, do you work with other UK integrators who supply the systems within storage and conveyor? And then as a second part to that question, he asks, do you use navigation, safety and vision components in your AGV/C units? And would you partner up with a global supplier in the UK?
First part of the question is obviously do we work with other UK integrators, and the answer is yes. A lot of large clients that we deal with, they have in-house suppliers that they'd like us to work with as opposed to bringing in third parties, and obviously we do that. Conveyor systems and other ASRS systems are quite commonplace, especially for larger clients. So yeah, obviously we work alongside those and use the relevant warehouse control and everything else to link into that. We're very, very strict as a business that we don't just take on board any third party and provider. In our group's history, HIC Robot is the first person or first company rather that we've actually partnered with in our whole 30-year history. So we take it extremely seriously. We have no need at the minute to partner with others, but that doesn't mean to say that we don't work alongside others.
Thank you, Joe. Next question here asks, what systems are available to isolate or fight or even mitigate or reduce fire risk?
So a lot of 3PL sites have very strict requirements for fire. A fire assessment is usually a common thing that's done on a very large scale deployment within warehouses as a result, obviously, of this fire. And they will usually provide us strict requirements on storage space, gaps, flow of air, sprinkler systems, the ability for the robots to stop automatically on fire detection and everything else like that, which is obviously standard things that we do as well. Our robots also run lithium iron 4 batteries or LiFePO 4 batteries, so they're classed as non-volatile, which we felt was extremely important given obviously issues that have happened in the past. But I don't think there's a right and wrong answer to that. It usually comes down to the client's individual insurance company, but common things are how far apart is stock stored? Is charging taking place within the storage area? Is it taking place outside of the storage area? And is there a specific dousing requirement for sprinkler systems? And the answer is we usually meet all of those.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. Another question here asks, how long before will it be before the UK reaches that same level as France, Italy, and some of those other countries that you mentioned earlier in terms of robotics market size? When will we start to see a kind of a leveling with those other countries?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think on that one, it comes down to how long is a piece of string, really. I think the UK is obviously very aware that actually automation needs to start taking a more kind of prominent step. Lots of clients that we talk to on a daily basis are planning that journey. Obviously, from the poll results as well, it seems like a lot of people in the webinar today are already thinking about that particular journey. So I think we will get there, definitely. In terms of time frame, whether that's 5 years, whether that's 10 years, or whether that's even in the next 2 years, is all obviously down to individual businesses trying to catch up with that. But I think obviously from our experiences, the key messages are to let UK businesses know that actually automation and warehouse robotics isn't this scary word that means tens of millions of pounds. It's actually definitely an affordable solution these days, and it's about kind of maybe revisiting a particular project that you had in mind, or actually starting to think about a new idea, and then start to think about warehouse robotics and how it can actually help you out, rather than actually just thinking that it's this dream world that actually is never achievable. It's definitely something to take into account and start thinking about, really.
Yeah, I think it's also a change in mindset and a generational mindset as well. Manufacturing has always, especially like car manufacturing, gone straight to automation. That's the first thing that they look at and do. Warehousing obviously is, some of the bigger players have obviously gone to automation, but everyone else just goes the traditional route. They don't think about anything else. And especially if you look at other companies sort of further afield in sort of Europe and America and Asia and places like that, they don't consider the traditional way. They go straight to automation because they know that's going to give them the best ROI. And I think we're at that cusp now where we don't have a choice. We're limited on space, we're limited on workforce and everything else like we've covered in the presentation. That we have to change. I would personally like to see us leveling out within the next 2 years, but time will tell on that one.
Well, Joe, Greg, that brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you both very much for joining us this afternoon. It was fantastic, brilliant presentation and super insightful with some brilliant questions from the audience. I'd just like to thank OWR for sponsoring today's webinar, which again will be available to view on demand from tomorrow afternoon via logisticsmanager.com and roboticsandinnovation.co.uk in case you'd like to refer back to the presentation or share it with a colleague. Before we go, as you can see on the screen now, registration is open for Intralogistics, the UK's premier intralogistics and materials handling exhibition, which takes place at the Ricoh Arena in Coventry on the 27th and 28th of May. Visit intralogistics.co.uk now to secure your place and discover the latest offerings to be showcased from the leading intralogistics and materials handling equipment suppliers to the UK. That's a wrap. Thank you all for attending today's session. I'm John Thornton, and I'll see you again at the next Intralogistics Connected webinar soon. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you, John.